Renita Bonadis. Good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. This is the 7th month that I've gotten up to address this board. I stand and speak for those in this community that cannot speak for themselves. There are teachers for fear of losing their jobs, parents for fear of their child being singled out, and community members for fear of repercussions with their business or family. I am a child of God and choose to stand and fight for the children of this community. There is an agenda that exists to destroy the family, indoctrinate the children, and destroy the future of this country. So many parents do not understand the depths to which they will go to steal the very souls of the children. One way is through the indoctrination and perversions that are being taught in the schools through the DEI, CRT, SEL, and other programs. As our elected officials, you have chosen to embrace this Marxist agenda that is going after the children of this school district. In the midst of the pandemic, MPS board members held board meetings and a workshop in the summer of 2020. A board education proclamation was made. It reads, "Resolution to change the system, eliminate racism, and create more equitable, inclusive schools for all." This was done on August 3rd of 2020. Great time to make such a big change when everyone is distracted with the pandemic. Such priorities. It is clear that this district is driven by their community business partners' agenda, which is primarily Dow Chemical Corporation. They lent a manager for 15 months, encouraged the DEI program, and contributed to the cost of the DEI evaluation prepared by the California consulting firm and presented last month. The superintendent and board should be more concerned with the education of the students than this program for indoctrination. This board was not elected to determine the values that children are to be taught. That is the parents' responsibility. But perhaps it isn't, because this superintendent and board know that they really do have the right to control what the children are taught in school. They have been trained, and laws are in place to give them that right. It is really the parents in the community that don't understand exactly what has happened to the education system over the past 50 to 100 years. These government institutions own your children if you allow your children to attend these public institutions. It is perhaps best to remove your children from these schools unless you want the schools indoctrinating them and teaching them values that do not align with yours. The other option is to vote this board out and bring in elected officials that believe in God, the Constitution, and the freedoms we have been given, not the Marxist agenda being pushed by this group of elected officials and their employee, Mr. Sharo. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Bill Domina. I came from New Jersey. I lived next to Newark, New Jersey, which is I call the Detroit of the East. And I went through high school in a place where it was pretty much divided between the races, and there was the areas that you were allowed to go if you were black. There's the ones if you were the guys who were the smoke and drug guys and all this other stuff. And it was always tension between that. It was really dangerous for everybody because it was after the riots and after the burning down. And I went to school in Newark, and it was very tense. Then my 5 kids went through Midland Public Schools, and I was amazed. They never thought of each other as different races or whatever. All their friends were their friends, and it was like an amazing transformation from where I came from. And this was like, the kids are now 40, 35, and I don't see the purpose of teaching our differences as being inclusive. And I just wanted to say that I'm really concerned when we start dividing by differences instead of uniting by our commonalities. And I don't want to lose that, because that's what made those kids, they don't look at people that way. They look at everyone as if they're just their friends. And on the terms of diversity and all that other stuff, what I really am concerned about was the lack of a definition of equity. Because what I have found, it's the people in charge get to define what equity is. And I found that in my work life as well. Whoever's in charge gets to define what that is. So as an engineer, I would like to have some definitions that are hard, fast, and immutable, and not subject to subjectivity. And that's just my comment on that. I really worry about the people in charge making the definition of what is okay. And I'd just like to get back to, we're all the same. let's just get along, because my kids benefited from it, and I'd like to see that continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Matt Buchek here. Brian, John, thank you for bringing up. I think the main point should be for teacher salaries that we look at what's competitive and go beyond that, because we are on this island here in Midland. Appreciated the talk, though. Every single person on the planet is dealt an arbitrary hand in some sense. Some receive unfair burdens. Seeing someone dealt a rough hand is painful. It's painful for everyone, as people with morals, at least, want to help. It's not evident who is dealt the toughest hand, or if any school district could do an appropriate job of measuring this. All of us, though, have unearned privileges and unearned advantages, especially living in the United States. Unless you're morally bankrupt, there is a universal burden that comes along with those privileges. And I quote, "To whom much is given, much will be required." Luke 12:48. This is the common ground for DEI. However, I wish they focused on the moral part of it instead of preying off of our kindnesses. Create an environment for everyone to succeed regardless of where they're at. We would help each other out, naturally, without intervention, without continuous surveys. Instead, diversity is used to create tension, stifle the best candidates. Equity brings everyone to ground zero instead of lifting up those who are down. And inclusiveness is only if you subscribed, and again, the Marxist takeover of our schools. As those with contrasting ideas and opinions are unwelcome, they're excluded. How else do you divine it? Look at what's happened since 2018 when DEI was forced on the district. Teachers poaching children in middle school to be in sexual clubs, death threats going unchecked on students supporting local police, mental dysphoria being encouraged in MPS schools, boys and girls restrooms, and the girl being suspended. All students find themselves as the suppressor and the suppressed. It's divisive, and it seems like the best way to create the ultimate control for the funding organizations. What the hell do we all do? I believe time will show that the program is corrupt, and its main goal is to break down society and create tension. It's already doing a great job at that. Some of you on the board must think DEI is at least a little cringeworthy, like it's bigoted and pretty much racist, right? You see that? When the push to hire an identity and not a person, what a slap in the face. Not only to a potentially hardworking individual who has passed up, but for the person who was hired. Makes me sad. Would they and their colleagues ever stop questioning if they were a quota hire? We need to push everyone to be the best and give them the tools to succeed without the mental charades. Did you see our proficiency scores over the last year? It wasn't just COVID. Middle school, go figure, 6th and 7th grader proficiency in math, English, language arts dropped more than the state average dropped over this time period. But no, DEI is number one focus. Read the end of our emails. Cringeworthy and shameful.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mindy Cox. I just have a short little message. I just wanted to make the board aware that a Freedom of Information Act document request from Rise Up Midland was due on March 25th, 2022, and has not been received. This date was 10 days post good faith payment, and just wanted that to bring to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay.